Good one. I'm sure there are. There'll be some quite inventive...
NHS!
Save our NHS!
Save our NHS!
Johnson, hear us say, NHS is here to stay. NHS is here to stay.
Boris Johnson,
Hear us say, NHS is here to stay.
NHS is here to stay.
And we're off. Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
Save our NHS! Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
Save our NHS!
Save
NHS! Save our NHS!
Save our NHS!
Save our NHS! Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
Save our NHS!
What do we want?
Hey, justice!
When do we want it? Now! Hey, justice!
Now! Hey, justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Hey, justice!
When do we want it? Now! What do we want?
Hey, justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Hey, justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Hey, justice!
Excuse me.
Hey, justice! Now! Hey, justice! Now!
What do we want?
Hey, justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Hey, justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
Save our NHS!
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 Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
Welcome back, everybody. That was short and sweet and rather wet, but I think we got our message across to town. So well done, everybody. If you can gather at the bottom of the steps, that's fantastic. And we'll get our speakers party up here. As quick, although the rain seems to be stopping it, he says. We'll get our speakers party up here. Alistair and Shay, if you could move the banner maybe to the side and put it up against the hedge or something, that'd be great. Because you're acting as a bit of a sort of block there. But if people sort of gather around the bottom of the stairs, we'll start our rally in a minute.
Hey, see if it's that right. I've got really wet arm.
I think that's got you. I can't see.
Comparing the speakers and introducing them. So if he can get off his phone for a minute, which is always a bit of an issue with Mr. Tacey, I'd like to introduce Matt Tacey.
Hello everybody, good morning, good morning. For those that don't know me, I'm Matt Tacey, I'm a nurse. I am the troublemaker of today, I do apologise. And core leadership team for Nurses United. Now before I start, those that were here last year, you would have seen me crying. I was an absolute emotional mess, and I promise you, I've got my big boy pants on today, so I won't be doing that again. What I do need to do is I do need to say thank you to a few people. My mum raised me well. So first of all, James, obviously the Trade Union Council and the SWP who have been supporting us this week and well, ever since it began last year. They've helped us with banner drops this week and leafleting and just getting the word out, so thank you to you. The stewards who helped us get around, thanks guys, I really appreciate that. The speakers, because it's not easy standing up in front of you beautiful lot, so it's a difficult job to do. And obviously every single one of you that has attended today, because we can put the hard work in, but it's you guys turning up today that's actually made it, particularly in this wet weather, so thanks very much. So what we are, one of the reasons, many of you will know, one of the reasons why we are doing today is it's a big birthday for the National Health Service on Monday. It's going to be 73. So I want us all to give something back to the National Health Service because we have all sort of, got something from it during our lives and we will continue to. So I want to sing Happy Birthday. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Right. And usually in the middle when you're at a party and you don't know the name, you go, Happy Birthday. So this, what we're going to do is in the middle, it's to the NHS, just to clarify that. So, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to the NHS. Happy birthday to you. Wonderful, thank you. Got a fantastic voice, haven't I?
Don't give up the day job, man.
I'm available for party bookings if you need me. Not a problem. I wanted to talk about somebody who I've got a lot of respect for. Unfortunately, last week he lost his job. He shares the first name as me, Matt. And his name is Matt Hancock. No, I'm joking. I absolutely despise the man. I think what we've seen, when we talk about his performance over the past few months, we can talk about the care homes where he's failed to protect the vulnerable community. That in itself was enough to resign. He didn't. We can look at the PPE fiasco, where we've been sent practically to war in shabby PPE, not protecting us. I was speaking to a registrar yesterday in London, and she was telling me how they were recycling FFP3 masks. So what they were doing, there'd be sick bowls, they'd write their name on the sick bowl, and they'd have to turn the FFP3 mask upside down to use again. And I often wonder how many healthcare workers have we lost because the government has failed to protect us. And I do hope they are held to account. I know there's a COVID inquiry going on at the minute. But then we can also look at the billions of pounds he's given to his mates. The absolute shambles of test and trace, which has not worked and still doesn't work to this day. So yeah, that man is a criminal. That man is a crook. He's smug. And he deserves absolutely everything that's come to him. But let's not forget, we saw the images from the office last week where he was getting off with his mistress. And I don't know whether anybody saw when Dominic Cummings gave evidence, a journalist ran up to Matt Hancock and said, "Oh, Matt, did you hear the evidence that Cummings gave?" And the cheeky git, excuse my language, I know his children, he said, "Oh no, I didn't see it. I was too busy saving lives." And I thought to myself, and he was actually being serious. I thought, what a smug... I was about to swear then, my mum might watch this, so I do apologise, Mum. But let's not forget. So he said, well, that was it. He said, we're too busy saving lives. But I don't know about you, but the images from that office, I think he was more at risk of reproducing a life than actually saving any. And let's just think, he came out and apologised, but he didn't resign immediately, did he? So once again, he tried to get away with it. And then the public sort of, the assent from the public was, we're not going to accept this. So eventually he resigned. And it just winds me up that some other Tory sort of ministers have come out and said he's done the right thing by resigning, sort of turning it into a positive, as if he's done something good. Anyway, so yeah, I despise the man and I'm very, very glad to see the back of him. Now, the new health minister, Sajid Javid, a businessman, that's what he is. And I just want to read out a tweet from Zara Sultana, who's the MP for Coventry South. And I think this sums up Javid perfectly. The new health secretary, Sajid Javid, earns $150,000 as an advisor to the US bank JP Morgan. JP Morgan say they see the opportunities that lie ahead for private healthcare. It's the ultimate opportunity for healthcare and NHS privatisation. The NHS isn't safe with the Tories. And I think that's all we need to say. My T-shirt does say NHS versus Tories, because we can't have both. The Tories are absolutely destroying and suffocating the National Health Service. In their aim is the end game is to privatise. So what I do want to share with you today is, when you see sort of stuff like that online, call it out, share it, stand against it, attend rallies like this. Standing shoulder to shoulder. It's lovely to see so many people here today. But we need to stand up for what we believe in. And that's standing up against austerity. It's standing up against poverty, to cuts, to racism, standing, for the climate changes, sexism, the violence against women, because together we are stronger than them. Together we will overpower the hate in this world. And that's exactly what we need to do. So, keep attending. I'm finishing now. It was a bit longer than I expected.
Very good.
Anyway, I'm going to start introducing the speakers. So, a big round of applause. We have Mel Kerr. Right, I'm going to try and get the titles right. Resuscitation practitioner and educator, and she is she's an RCN council member. And I do just quickly want to say, this morning, if you didn't see it, she was on Sky News Live from here in Chesterfield talking to them. So, over to you, Mel.
Oh, Mel.
Thank you. Oh, wonderful, it does work. That's good then. I just wanted to start by saying thank you, Matt. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Good speech, good start. What a great way to start the rally. Thank you very much to everyone who's joined us today, and thank you to everyone involved in the organisation of this event so we can defend our right to protest safely and effectively. I think we can all agree that the past year has been incredibly hard for everybody, and certainly was an unprecedented way to commemorate the year of the nurse and midwife, and it's one I don't think we'll ever forget. On a daily basis as an RCN rep, I have conversations with members and colleagues who express to me how the day-to-day responsibilities and expectations they have in their job role ever increases, with no additional staff to allow patient care to be delivered safely or effectively. This isn't something that we can only see during this pandemic. It's a chronic issue in healthcare and the NHS. In 2017, we had just under 36,000 nursing vacancies, and only 2 years on, we found a record-breaking vacancy rate of 43,000 across the UK. In my area alone, we've seen nearly 50% of our ITU nurses either leave the area or leave the profession entirely since just last November, due to the sheer pressure and exhaustion they face during this pandemic, and that's not just in ITU. There is little to no evidence of this improving despite what lies this government feeds us. As a growing population with more complex long-term care demands, we are simply unable to provide the consistently harm-free care that is demanded of us on a daily basis at the current staffing levels we are forced to work with. This only got worse during the global pandemic, where we saw the acuity of our patients rise tenfold, our patients who were sicker than ever. Staff were asked to support crit care areas above and beyond their comfort zones and experience to help support ITU colleagues that were swamped with ventilated patients across the country. Routine services were suspended to give hospitals their best chance at coping with the amount of inpatients that we were getting, meaning services were unable to provide their usual care to patients who sorely needed it. And now as these services resume, we are facing huge influxes of critically unwell patients following the impacts this pandemic has had on long-term illnesses and chronic diseases. So what does this have to do with pay? The NHS pay campaign has been ongoing for a year now, since NHS workers were excluded from the public sector pay increase. Yet again, this government continues to degrade and demoralise the very broken staff of the healthcare sectors. Already as a profession, we've faced over 10 years of austerity, up to real-time pay cuts of 20%, and that's something that cannot be allowed to continue. Inflation is expected to rise yet again this year, and yet another real-time pay cut that we are yet to face. Personally, I simply cannot afford my basic monthly cost of living without picking up nearly weekly bank shifts as extra cash to allow me to comfortably pay bills, enjoy the simple pleasures in life, and to save for my wedding, which is being postponed like so many others. But that means sacrificing valuable time with my fiancé, who I hardly see as a result. This shadows in comparison to friends I have that struggle on a daily basis, having to choose between fuel for the car to travel to work and their lunch that day. To see colleagues utilising food banks to feed their families is heartbreaking. Why should healthcare workers be facing such financial instability in what this government claims to be a fully developed and flourishing country? And equally, the same goes for a lot of the general population. We as a population should not be living in poverty due to this government's incompetence, and enough is enough. To be told there isn't enough money to support a truly restorative pay rise, frankly, is a lie. For this government to have the audacity to claim there is not enough money to fund a remunerative pay rise after their very public financial blunders over the last year is an absolute joke. But let's say there isn't enough money. Well, evidence shows that the government could gain back at least 80% of the monies required for a pay rise for healthcare sectors in the year following. And the risk that they have by not adequately paying healthcare workers far outweighs the benefits of the current societal problems. It has a direct impact on patient safety and providing harm-free care, and that is not something I'm willing to sit by and allow happen. So what are the next steps? Get active. Unions hold a lot of power independently and collectively, but we have no power without the membership. You are the union. You make the demands and dictate what action we take. Attend your branch meetings, get in contact with local reps in the regional office. Activism isn't just about being on the picket line or publicly vocal. It can be as simple as having a conversation with colleagues in shift. Have you heard about the pay campaign? Make sure details are up to date. Any day we expect the pay review body offer to drop, and unions will be consulting members about their next steps, with the potential to ballot for industrial action. And if that's where we're heading, we'll go there.
Yeah.
We need to be able to contact you so we can pass a ballot to allow us to fight and defend our right to a restorative pay rise. I'll finish by saying we are a safety critical workforce, and it is time this government finally prioritised the patient's safety in the NHS in this country. We demand to be heard. We demand to be recognised for the skill, knowledge and experience we have and the sacrifices we've faced during this pandemic. We demand fair pay for nursing. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Hello. Oh, there we go. It says on. Thank you very much. What am I doing with this? Sorry, excuse me. I don't know what. I do need that actually for my to introduce the next speaker. Right, the next speaker is Councillor Donna Hales, who is also a clinical nurse specialist.
Hi everybody. I think I'll switch myself on. Yes, I have managed to do that. This time last year, a young man from down south was trying to rally people who would be interested in attending a rally for the NHS Pay 15 campaign. And it very much was in its infancy at that time. And over that time, we've become great friends and really supportive of each other. And I've also watched the NHS 15 Pay campaign grow and grow, and the public are getting behind us now. You will hear people say, well, you've got a job. Yeah, we have got a job. You haven't lost your jobs. What about our families? What are we going to do? So you can understand that this government at the moment is deliberately trying to play the public against the NHS and NHS workers. There is no doubt about that in my mind. We will start to see slurs, sleaze and accusations targeted towards the NHS. Now, as yet, we haven't been told what the new target's going to be for our working lives at the moment, and we can expect that to happen fairly soon as NHS hospitals start to open up and the public return to our care, the care that they really need from us, the care that they could have had this time last year if this government had acted swiftly and in accordance with SAGE and other organisations which were saying at that time lockdown, but they didn't lock down purely for economic reasons. One of the other things that I've noticed actually is that the private hospitals during this pandemic have not been taking COVID patients. They have been operating totally as normally. It's been business as usual. They didn't support the NHS. That was 16,000 nurses that could have come from the private sector to support the NHS, and they didn't. Where were they? We asked for them. We were told they were going to be there. During this time, in this past year, lots of us have lost significant people, and that includes me and Matt. We both have lost family members due to COVID, and it's been devastating. And that is some of the pain that most of the public are going through. Whether it's losing people through COVID, whether it's losing the breadwinner, it doesn't really matter. People have lost significant people, and it's going to have a knock-on effect in our community. Our children are in a terrible situation at the moment, and that's one of my passions, is looking after the young people in our communities. They haven't had any activities. There's been no youth clubs, which there's not very many anyway. There's been no other children's services. I have just done a first aid safety course for after the pandemic, to look after children. And that is appalling. Why are we having to do that? Parents don't know whether they're coming or going. They don't know whether to go to work. They're having to use their annual leave because schools suddenly close and their children isolate. Why haven't this been better organised? Someone's paying for this and we're paying for it. As NHS workers, we will tell you time and time again, we are advocates for patients' care. It's that. Simple. There's nothing else to say about it. We are the public's advocates, and we need the public's support to continue doing the work that we want to do in supporting you. This is a sorry state of affairs at the moment. I don't know what's going to happen in the next year. We're probably going to go back into another austerity measure. I can see that happening. Once again, the public, but the private sector aren't going to pay the price. It's going to be the public. It's going to be you and me. So support your NHS, be very vocal, continue to beat the drum for us, and we don't want to have any further significant pay cuts. And that's what will happen if we get 1%. It'll be a significant pay cut because we can't pay our rents either. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Donna did mention about losing a family member, so I do want to speak about her briefly, and I'm going to try not to cry. Thank you, Donna. That's fine, it's fine. So I did lose my grandma on New Year's Day. It was because of COVID, she caught COVID. And I'm trying to go through the grief process, and I understand what the grief process is. I'm a psych nurse, so I understand, the responses to it. But even with sort of sound knowledge and understanding of the grief process, I just can't. And the reason I can't is my anger. I'm angry. I'm very, very angry, and I hold this government solely responsible for her death. Because she caught COVID when she went to hospital at Christmas, when they lessened the restrictions, because it was a Christian holiday. Well, what about Eid and Ramadan? They were postponed. So why is, the problem is, we can have another Christmas next year. My grandma won't. Anyway, without further ado, I'll announce the next speaker. It's quite a long title, so I'll try and get this right, Dean. So it's Dean Collins, Senior Rep Unite, plus Staff Side Chair at Chesterfield Royal, and Tulo Officer for the Chesterfield Labour Party.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for everybody what's organised this as well. It's been a good day, a bit wet, but we move on. And I echo a lot of the comments what I've said before myself. So welcome colleagues and friends of the NHS. I'm Dean Collins. I've worked for the NHS on and off for 10 years. I'm the Senior Rep for Unite, and I chair the staff side up at Chesterfield Royal. Why are we here today? After the long slog we have endured over the past 18 months, well, for myself, it is only right that we protest and lobby for a substantial pay rise for all workers in the NHS. By substantial, I don't mean the 2.1% what they agreed in one of the budgets. I, along with my trade union Unite, are calling for £3,000 or 15%, whichever is greater. We have had in real terms a 20% pay cut to our wages over the last 11 years by this Tory government, and let's not forget, this Tory government were propped up by the Lib Dems from 2010 to 2015. They come along to these protests, they show their face, but they've been propping up the government by doing pay cuts in the early years. We've had politicians gladly clapping during the pandemic to show the press, TV, their support for the NHS. However, we know it's not support, it's all for them. These claps don't pay the bills for nurses, midwives, healthcare assistants, phlebotomists, cleaners, admin staff and porters, to name a few. The ideal opportunity to thank the staff for what they decided to offer, a 1% pay rise. They can stick that 1%, it's not worth the paper it's written on. The suggested pay offer was whilst Hopeless, Hancock and Co were giving their friends and Tory donors big money contracts for PPE and wasted 37 billion, not million, billion, on a track and trace system that has had no impact whatsoever. I call on you and all NHS staff to back the call for 15%, unite together to reject the tiny offer this government has proposed, and take any action necessary to achieve the best pay deal we can for all that work in the National Health Service. Thank you, and keep up the fight for a substantial pay rise.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks. You mentioned the Tories there, and I want to let you all into a little secret. So, myself, Mel, and Sarah, she's just left, we had a meeting with Lee Rowley, MP. And Sarah logged on a little bit early, and she attended a different meeting that she wasn't due to attend, and Lee Rowley was on camera. 15 minutes later, when we logged on, there was no camera. He didn't turn his camera on. The man couldn't even give us the respect and decency to look us in the faces when he was talking to us. So next speaker, Rebecca Bryson, occupational therapist and Unison member. Rebecca.
Cheers. Sorry, not enough hands. Hello. I just need to get these reminders up on my phone. So, thanks everyone for being here in the pouring rain. And I said to Teresa earlier, I think it's actually stopped, but she said you're just so wet that you can't notice it anymore. So, the first thing I wanted to say actually was how proud I am to work with Matt, who I'm sure you all know by now, and with Teresa and people like them, because actually I started in their team 2 weeks before the lockdown in March last year. So I had 2 weeks in the office, and then we were all sent to work from home, which was obviously very difficult for everyone, but at the same time we were aware that there were people that it felt like were in a much worse position working on ITUs and inpatient units and things like that. So I was just so happy when Matt popped up and organised a demo when the stuff came out about the NHS pay, just to find that even though I'd probably not even met any of them, there were other people in my workplace who felt the same way about me. Who felt the same way that I did. And about me, okay. So it's because of them people and others like them who have already spoken, and all of us that are here today, that I can feel that I can stand up here and do this. This is not something that I would have ever imagined myself doing when I was younger. Like, I couldn't even speak in an empty room, to be honest with you. So that's kind of the first thing that I wanted to say, which was quite a long first thing really, but I have got a message. So I'm a Unison member in South Derbyshire Healthcare Branch, brought our banner. I'm speaking in a personal capacity, that's a special Unison thing that we have to say. And I've got a few words from Paul Hardy, who's our Unison lead at Derbyshire Healthcare. He would have been here and he would have been speaking today, but unfortunately he's having to isolate, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying that's because his daughter has actually got COVID and was a bit quite unwell actually earlier this week, and is hopefully doing okay now, but it just reminds us all how close to home it is really. So I've got a message from Paul. He says, just a few words. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, comrades. It's time that the NHS was fully renationalised. All NHS workers deserve a pay rise. First they clapped us, then they slapped us. Keep your 1%. We deserve and we demand a lot more. Thank you. So, I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I'll just carry on until Matt yanks me off really. So, that's Paul's words. I've got Teresa's words now, and she's claiming that she can't speak words, so she's standing there and I'm going to read them for her, and she's going to bang Matt's drum. So, so we were talking the other day, weren't we, and I was saying, like, I'd said that I would do this, and I said, why don't you do it, because you could, you know. And what we ended up doing was Teresa's written down what she would have liked to say, really, and I just think it's fantastic, so I'm just going to read it as it is and let it speak for itself, really. So it says, "Sometimes when I'm afraid, I want to run, hide and pretend it's not happening. Pretend what's not happening? The destruction of the NHS. The marchers aren't so much about fair pay as they are about keeping the NHS's ability to recruit. Poor pay equals poor staffing levels, equals more staff leaving, equals not enough staff to offer a service. Perfect. It can now be sold off as not fit for purpose to Boris's pals. Scary. So it's understandable people want to keep the covers over their heads. So do I. But I can't now. I think what we could do is to gently help those in denial, those who say, I'm just grateful to have a job, understand that this is not about money, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think the key is to be kind and gentle. Imagine if someone ripped the cover off your head, screaming, fire, we're all going to die. Or if they gently pulled the cover back and held out their hand, saying, there's a fire, but take my hand, I think I know how we can get out of this. We need to explain the bigger picture, but that we can make a difference if we just try to be brave and work together. So, I've run out of other people's words now, so I'm going to try and garble out a few of my own. And I think that's what I want to speak about, really, about being brave, because I think a lot of health workers and a lot of other people have been brave for a very long time, and over the last 18 months they've had to be brave in a way that they never imagined or signed up for, really. And that's something, I'll say we, but I don't feel like I've done that, but that's something that we do, but it's not something that we ever got put in a contract or we signed up for, or anybody ever asked us if it was okay, or if it was okay to carry on doing that, even though we'd done that in a dire emergency, because that dire emergency doesn't seem to show any signs of ending at the moment. So you get this kind of narrative that health workers are heroes, are superheroes. I'm a bit in two minds about that, really, because we seem to have become that, but why should we be, really? We're just trying to do a job. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to say about that. But I think things that make me feel more positive are days like today, where even in the pouring rain, where you'd think like it's a total washout, nobody's going to come. I'm rubbish with numbers, so I'm not a nurse, so I don't have to do medications or anything like that, so don't worry. A lot of people, I'll say. We've had a lot of people, despite the rain, and I know, people have had to go because they're soaking wet. I can't take these sleeves off my arms now, but it just gives me hope that we can fight back, and we will fight back, and we're going to have to. Let's be honest about it. We don't really have a choice about it. And there are little strikes happening in the health service all over the place, all the time. Tiny strikes, group supporters, groups of van drivers, groups of domestics. But we don't hear about them, do we? We don't hear about them because they're not interesting to the mainstream media. They're not as, I was going to say exciting, but that's not the right word, as sordidly appealing as a picture of Matt Hancock doing what he does, you know? So we need to tell those stories, but we also need to make our own stories and make them big. So that's why we need, when pay offer comes out, and it's going to come soon, and it's going to be rubbish, we know that. It's going to be 1%, 2%, or if we're really lucky, 4%. We're going to need to respond immediately, all of us together. We're going to need to come back out on the street, even if it's raining, and then we're going to need to start balloting in our unions. So if you're not in a union, you need to join one. If you're in one, great. What are you doing? Get active. It's never too late, and there's always someone, as I've found, coming into the team where I am now, there's always someone who will give you confidence, who'll do it with you. We'll do it together, and we'll move forwards, and we can fight this, and we will win. I want to finish with two quotes. Sorry, I will shut up in a minute. Two quotes, so not my words again, and I'll probably get them completely wrong. I think it was Bob Crow who said, if you fight, you might not always win. But if you never fight, you'll never win. But the final one is from an absolute hero of mine, Angela Davis. And she said, and people may have heard this before, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things that I cannot accept. And that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, well done. And the word hope that Rebecca mentioned is something that I want to discuss briefly, because days like today, it does leave us feeling hopeful. And NHS staff, all across our communities through COVID, there's been a huge strain on our mental health, on the economy, on our family life, on our social life. But days like today, when we something very powerful about shared beliefs and morals and values, and days like today do leave us with hope. The next speaker is Jane Hindle, Derbyshire County Council care worker. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you so much for asking me to come and speak to you today. I work for Derbyshire County Council. I'm in adult care. I work in social care in North East Derbyshire in a community team. But I actually retired from being a social worker a year ago last April, and I was based at Chesterfield Royal Hospital, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But I wanted to start with the things that other speakers have talked about. The absolute courage and determination, the stress and pressure that colleagues in the NHS and care services, in care homes, in community teams, everywhere in the health and care sector have had to show over this pandemic. And when you compare that to the total cowardice, lies and hypocrisy of this Tory government, it absolutely stinks. Completely and utterly rotten. From the beginning of this pandemic, we were told that we had to protect the NHS. Absolutely right. Well, it's a real shame, isn't it, that successive governments for 25 years haven't needed to protect our NHS. It's a real shame, isn't it, that they've outsourced and privatised, that they've mothballed wards, that they've closed community hospitals like the one in Bakewell and Bolsover, that they've had staffing shortages that year on year have become more chronic, that they have driven people to work in unsafe conditions without enough staff, that they have been prepared to privatise and sell off to their rich mates, whether it's test or trace, or whether it's outsourcing whole departments like that at Chesterfield Royal. They have lined the pockets of business in the interest of profit and a market to completely destroy our NHS, to then make the case for completely getting rid of public health care altogether. That is what the agenda has been all along. And so we entered this pandemic in a state where the NHS was already on its knees because of that market, because of that agenda, because of that political failure. And so when Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock stand and clap or cry crocodile tears on Good Morning Britain, it makes you want to puke. Absolutely puke. How dare they? How dare they? It's disgraceful. And yet the people in my street that came out and clapped from the first week of the pandemic, to them it wasn't about gratitude alone. It was about solidarity with an NHS that they depend on, that they know their very lives depend on, that their families work in, that they use, that they rely on, that they go to when they're sick and in need. It was about supporting a care sector that they've got elderly relatives in. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when I worked at Chesterfield Royal in adult care, and Matt Hancock says that people were not sent to care homes without tests. It's a complete and total lie. I was instructed by managers in social care to do that. Nursing colleagues were instructed by managers in the NHS Primary Care Trust to do that. We sent elderly people with COVID into care homes to carry a deadly disease, a killer disease, to other elderly people. Why? Because there weren't enough beds in the NHS. There weren't enough staff in the NHS. It was absolutely disgraceful and murderous, and no wonder they won't admit it. A complete and total lie. And then, of course, there was the lie about PPE. Matt and other people have talked about it. There was not enough PPE for the first 6 weeks. There still isn't now, a year and a half later. And what do? They get on their private phones to people like, forgotten his name, James Dyson, who manufactures vacuum cleaners. Can you make us some ventilators? We'll give you a few billion, James. You're a Tory donor. Thank you very much. Line your back pocket. And yet people were dying because they literally could not breathe in intensive care units, where nurses were looking after 4 to 5 patients at a time. And then we get Dido Harding, my God. You know, she's going to be in charge of NHS England, is she? You know, the track and trace fiasco. You know, Dean's right, £37 million, billion pounds of our money as taxpayers, wasted on a complete and total mess that could have meant avoidable deaths. Absolute disgrace, and this woman's going to run NHS England. Really? Really? And they're going to come in with the agenda of more cuts, more privatisation. We know what it's going to mean. And Dido Harding has the absolute gall to say, we are going to stop employing overseas nurses. What? That's racism. Let's call it what it is. It's racism, pure and simple. The NHS was built on migrant workers from the Caribbean to India to Pakistan, across the world and now to Europe. It is a diverse workforce, one of the most diverse in the country. It's something everybody's proud of. When my dad was dying in Leeds in Seacroft Hospital of mesothelioma, he was looked after by a doctor that trained in Cairo. He was cared for nurses from Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. He was fed by a care worker that came from Poland. That is what our NHS is and will stay. And Dido Harding can stick her racism and her division and her scapegoating. We will unite all of us together. NHS, no matter what the colour of your skin, no matter what language you speak, no matter where you're from. And I think we need to say this too, that in adult care where I work every day with service users who are absolutely dependent on community nurses, psychiatric nurses, GPs, healthcare workers, support workers, care workers, and the people in care homes dependent on their care workers too. And you know what the Tories will say is that if the nurses get more than 1%, it's at the expense of the rest of the care sector. It's a lie. A complete lie. Because if the NHS nurses get better pay, then we can all fight for better pay. We'll feel confident to fight for better pay. We will take our coats off and hold yours while you fight, and then we will defy the Tory pay freeze in the public sector. So we need unity. We will not let them divide us. And inside the NHS, you know, they'll do this. They'll say to porters and cleaners and the caterers and the healthcare, the nurses are greedy. The British Medical Association consultants talking about an overtime ban are greedy. No, you're not. You're the vanguard, you're the front line, you're the first in the fight, but the rest of us are there with you. Absolutely there with you. Because your victory is ours. And I'm going to end by this. There are more billionaires now through COVID than there were when we went into it. The carnage of a pandemic of needless death has made an awful lot of people very, very rich, while the rest of us have worked, have lost loved ones, have paid the price, and there's going to be no more of it. No more of it. And so your fight is mine. My fight will be yours. We will stand in unity as working people together and defy this Tory government and its agenda and its market and its profit before life. And we will continue to do that. In sunshine, in rain, no matter what. We have to. And we have to say to Keir Starmer and people in the Labour Party cabinet, where are you? Open your mouths. Speak up for us. Where is our opposition? Where is our leadership? Why the hell are you taking Boris Johnson on day after day after day relentlessly? Stand up and fight for the people that support you and vote for you. And that is what we need to do, organising our unions. And when it comes to a strike, we stand together, because they will say that it's callous, that people don't care if they go on strike. You will need to take action precisely because you care. Precisely because you're defending your NHS. It's not just about pay. It's about actual humanity. That's why you do the job you do, and I do the job I do. And when my dad died, he could name every health worker that ever took care of him. And they came to his funeral, and he wrote a speech with their names in thanking them. That is what this means to the public and people like him. Keep fighting. Solidarity. You will win.
Fantastic. Whoa, the passion, could you feel it? I'll have to borrow some of that passion for my next week when the PRB come back with an offer. What I will do, Jane, is I'll invite you next time I meet with Lee Rowley. He'll get a certain shock, won't he? Won't know what's hit him.
Wouldn't come
Literally.
out alive.
Now, last, James is going to do some closing speeches. I do want to say a personal thank you to you, James. From August last year, when all this took off, I do feel like you've taken me under your wing. I do look at you a bit like a granddad figure. Oh, sorry, father figure. I do apologise. But no, he's given me he won't let me live that down. But no, he's given me a lot of guidance and support. So I do, from me to you, James, thank you, and over to you.
Thanks, Matt, for that, Grandad. I really just want to make one or two very brief closing remarks. First of all, as everyone else has done, thanks for coming. I think it's been a tough day because of the weather, but I think we've done fantastically well, and I think we've got a really important message out there. And I think the key message that's come from all our speakers today is the need for solidarity and the need to fight. And I want to give a message from Chesterfield Trade Union Council and from the trade union movement here in Chesterfield, North Derbyshire. We've been foursquare in our support for health workers and their campaign. And as we've heard from the speeches, we will have very, very shortly the findings of the pay review body, and then we'll be in a situation where health unions will be beginning to move into action. And at that time, I think two things are absolutely vital. First is unity amongst the health unions. For all different historical reasons, we may be in different unions, one from another. We've got members of Unite, the RCN, Unison, GMB here on this march today who work in healthcare. But it's really important that our unions come together in that struggle and put a clear demand for a proper pay rise for NHS workers. So that's an important task. And then the task that falls on the rest of us, and Jane was mentioning this in her speech, is the task of solidarity. Every single one of the rest of us in the trade union and labour movement need to make sure that support for that struggle and that fight, and support for strikes, when NHS workers ballot for strikes, we need to be 110% support in that. Because we've heard it from other speakers. There will be attacks, won't there? The mainstream media will go on the attack about greedy health workers, callous nurses, people not looking after their patients. And we have to be absolutely 100% in our support for that. Confident that actually there's a huge well out there inside the public, inside the British working class, of support for NHS and NHS workers. Really, really important we do that. So I think we'll give a pledge to you from the Trade Union Council, the Trade Union Movement here in Chesterfield, that when you're on your picket lines, when you're on strike, we'll do what we've always done before when people are on picket lines. And people remember when the nurses went on strike and when the junior doctors went on strike. We provide the Chesterfield TUC picket line breakfast service. Very good it was too, absolutely. We'll be on your picket line, supporting workers taking solidarity action. It means doing practical things, like making sure we get NHS workers, when you're balancing for strike action, taking strike action, around to speak to other groups of workers, to build those networks of solidarity. Because that's how we build our movement. It's building those networks of struggle and solidarity between workers in struggle and other groups of workers. So really, really important task for us. I want to just make one other point, and Jane made the point absolutely in her speech about Dido Harding and racism and division. Because absolutely, we will see it we have seen it over the last years, and we'll see it time and time again. When our rulers are in trouble, they play the divide and rule card. Always do, always have done. It's what the ruling class always do. The minority they pick on will be different at different times. Sometimes it'll be black people, sometimes it'll be Muslims, sometimes it'll be the LGBT plus community. They'll find a minority and pick on it to try and divide workers. So a key message for our movement is to fight against division and to fight against racism. Stand Up to Racism was due to have a speaker here today, Hassan Hajjat, who's a pharmacist who works for the NHS. Unfortunately, he, like some of our other speakers who can't come today, is having to isolate, so can't come here today. But Jane made this point that Hassan would have made very, very eloquently in her speech. So really I want to close it there. Once again, thanks everyone for coming along today. I think it's been a really, really good day. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you in particular for Matt for helping for being the key organised today. And we'll go on to make sure that we organise in solidarity with health workers when you take your strike action. Thank you very much for coming.